What's up, everybody? This is Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, HAWGsports.com. Welcome to the first episode of HawgSports Live of 2021. A lot has happened since we had the last show. I think like 10 minutes after we posted the last show, the Texas Bowl was canceled. So we got a lot to go over, some shakeup with Arkansas's coaching staff, a little bit of transfer, recruiting type news. We'll get to it all on HawgSports Live. Before we get started, of course, I want to remind you there's plenty of ways to watch and listen. You can always tune in on Facebook Live. If you haven't followed the page yet, do so. If you like this video, then throw us a thumbs up. Also available on YouTube. Throw us a like there. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notifications bell so you're notified anytime we upload new videos. Also on Apple Podcasts, we'd love to have that 5-star rating from you if you just want to tap that real quick. Also, if you'd like to leave a review, we'd love to have that from you as well. Also available on Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere else you can think of to find your favorite podcast. Be sure to sign up for our Hog Sports text alerts. You've been getting a lot of those lately. If you have been subscribed, sometimes we don't have them for a week, and then there might just be a wealth of breaking news, and we've seen a lot of that here lately. Also, subscribe to the newsletter so you get free Razorback content delivered to your inbox anytime. Well, I guess every morning we deliver free Razorback news to your inbox. So plenty of ways to follow Hog Sports content. Also, if you follow this page, then you're going to be you're going to get all of our free content here. If you like a VIP subscription, it's just $1 right now to get all the latest Razorback recruiting news, Curtis Wilkerson's insight on Razorback basketball, and some of my takes also. Also, new podcast, Hog Hoops Live. If you haven't followed Curtis Wilkerson on Twitter, you should. It's at @KurtWilkerson_ on Twitter. One of the emerging guys in this business. But his podcast, his new show, also comes on this Facebook channel. It's called Hog Hoops Live. He runs that after the midweek game. So Arkansas plays Tennessee on Wednesday at 6. So he'll have the show on Thursday this week. Okay. So obviously the Texas Bowl has been canceled. This is old news now, but the last time we did this show, we broke down everything between Arkansas and TCU. So it's unfortunate. Arkansas really took care of business. I've heard some stuff like people are like, Texas, TCU was backing out and all that kind of stuff. I mean, Arkansas had to cancel a bowl or postpone a game this season also. So, I mean, it's a virus. It spreads. That's what viruses do. I mean, I don't look at anybody and say you got coronavirus. Oh, well, you weren't being careful. It's not really fair. So it's an unfortunate circumstance. I was looking forward to that game. Felt weird. I mean, we were supposed to watch that game. There wasn't a game December 31st because this one was canceled. All right, obviously the big news coming out on Sunday, Justin Stepp leaving Arkansas for South Carolina. Now, this was surprising for a lot of reasons. And there was a lot of people saying that he was a candidate and stuff. And the thing of it is, Justin Stepp wasn't even contacted by South Carolina until a few days ago. Okay. He wasn't really a candidate. When we put out the information that, he's staying at Arkansas, that was accurate at the time. Okay. Things change in this business. Okay. They can change very quickly. Everything's hunky-dory, fine, until suddenly it isn't. But I've just heard a lot of speculation on this. And Stepp, first of all, did a great job at Arkansas as a recruiter, okay? Him and Jeff Traylor, Barry Lunney, best recruiters on Arkansas's last staff and did a bang-up job. I mean, the number of 4-star recruits that he brought in is definitely notable. His wide receivers had a good season. Traylon Burks had an all-SEC season. Mike Woods stepped up, had his best year. Devion Warren had his best year. So, I know the feeling is like if your girlfriend breaks up with you, right, she's the love of your life, and then she breaks up with you, and suddenly it's, who does she think she is? And that's kind of a little bit of the reaction I've seen, and that's fine. That's fine. I mean, that's just going to happen, and I'm sure Justin knows that, but he did a lot of good things at Arkansas. I can't fault anybody for wanting to move back home. The guy was born in Columbia, South Carolina. His parents lived there. He's got all kinds of relatives there. So I can understand that decision based on that. Otherwise it's just a lateral move, but I can understand, he's got 2 young kids. It's a rare opportunity. So farewell, Justin Stepp. Wish you well. But the information about him not being concerned about him leaving to South Carolina at the time was accurate. I mean, you go back to his Twitter page 5 days ago, he's like, praising Devion Warren for coming back. Can't wait to coach you one more year. That's just 5 days ago, so it just shows you things change quickly. But Justin Stepp's a good man and doesn't deserve any real angst. And Arkansas's made a good hire. Now, here's the thing of it. At the time this show's on right now, the Justin Stepp news officially isn't even like official. I mean, there's not been any kind of release officially, right? And we also put out yesterday, and credit Pinto479 on Twitter for getting this out there first, putting the name out there. But also, we have news that Kenny Guyton is the new wide receivers coach, and this is happening. He's already spoke to some recruits and stuff, guys that have already signed with Arkansas, I should say. So Kenny Guyton, who is, you may remember him, former Ohio State quarterback, mostly a backup in his career. His best season was his senior year, but got into coaching, I guess, in 2013. We'll go over his bio real quick. But this is an interesting hire, I think. So his connection is with Kendall Browse. But it just shows you, so Justin Stepp, word comes out that he's leaving, and then a couple hours later, Kenny Guyton's the guy. So it just shows you, first of all, he's way up on Arkansas's list, okay? Secondly, I think it shows you that, Stepp went through the proper channels and everything, notified, hey, this is what's happening. So hold on a second. I got a note here. Okay. All right. Sorry, sometimes news happens, so there's a little bit of stuff. I'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, Kenny Guyton, just to go back on him, so he was a grad assistant at Houston in 2013. He followed Tom Herman, who's since been fired at Texas, but he followed him to Texas, working in quality control. Okay. From there, he went back to Houston as wide receivers coach, spent a year at Louisiana Tech as wide receivers coach, outside wide receivers coach, and then was most recently at Colorado State in 2019. I believe he was hired. I believe that's right. 2000. I might have my years off a little bit. Colorado State only played 4 games this year, but he's at Colorado State, and apparently, when news came out with Justin Stepp that he's leaving, it's Kenny Guyton for Kendall Browse. It's let's get him. And he's on board and already talking to some recruits. It's not official yet either way that Stepp is gone or that Guyton has been hired, but that's what's happening. I should preface that and say most likely, because I did say I'm not worried about Justin Stepp leaving on December 14th when all that stuff started coming out. And that was actually based on very, 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 very reliable information. I wouldn't normally say something like that, but I know in this business that things change quickly. I probably should have said. So, Takia Crawford, 6'5", 335-pound offensive lineman at Charlotte, is transferring, as we know, and was supposed to decide today, okay? I've got a crystal ball pick into Arkansas on this. I'm not changing my mind on that. He has delayed his announcement. So he said he was deciding today. I still think it's going to be Arkansas, but it's not going to be today unless that changes again too. But I'm not sure why he changed his commitment announcement, but he has. So just for some background on Takia Crawford, number 230 ranked prospect in the country, number 19 offensive tackle, number 35 in Texas, 4-star prospect in the class of 2020. Okay, he was committed to Baylor. He decommitted from Baylor and committed to Arkansas, and was committed to Arkansas for a good while. I want to say it was 20 minutes after the Kentucky game. I was in Lexington, and I think I looked down at my phone coming off the field, and Takia Crawford had decommitted from Arkansas. Okay, and there was a lot of that going on at the time. The staff had recruited well, coming off 2-10. They put together a good class, and then guys started kind of dropping off, and Takia was one of those. So there was a lot of concern about his academics, and he ended up qualifying and signing with Charlotte, okay, where he played some last season. But since has decided to transfer. I'm told he's going to try to enroll this semester coming up. So he will be an early enrollee, but we'll see where he ends up. But I believe he's going to Arkansas. I have a little bit of pause on that since he backed off his decision today, but I still think, from what I'm hearing, that Arkansas is in good shape there. We'll see. We'll see what he decides. Big kid, 6'5", 335. This is what you want all of Arkansas's offensive line recruits to look like, this kid. I'll go ahead and read the I've got a bio here on him. Big frame. This is from Gabe Brooks, our Midlands region recruiting analyst. By the way, congratulations to Barton Simmons, who is taking on the player personnel. I can't remember what his title is exactly, but it's a recruiting type of title. He's taking a job at Vanderbilt. So congratulations to Barton Simmons. Known him for a long time, over a decade, I think. Gabe Brooks says, big frame, stout offensive lineman who initially looked like a guard prospect but now appears to be a legitimate tackle prospect at the Power 5 level, possesses college-ready size, long arm, barrel-chested and flat stomach, strong lower body, showed seismic improvement from sophomore to junior season, good motor, encouraging nimbleness and pass protection relative to side, a terror when cutting loose at the second level in the run game. Hunts linebackers and DBs with impressive open field athleticism, flashes disabling strength in phone booth. Difficult to dislodge from when locked on. Improving leg drive in the run game, ability to anchor versus bull rush. Must work on hand placement and consistency. Locks on outside targets frame too often. Sometimes more of a catcher than a puncher. Needs to show more consistent arm extension. Pad level comes and goes. Occasionally plays a bit heavy-footed. Certainly owns right tackle traits, but can he be a true left tackle? Still developing as a prospect, but owns high ceiling with requisite size to succeed at Power 5 level. Potential to develop into an NFL draft prospect. Compares him to Morgan Moses, who's with the Washington football team in the NFL. So, not deciding today as it stands right now, but probably won't be too long. I mean, if he wants to enroll early, it's probably time to start making those decisions. Some other big schools are in on him, but he does want to move back closer to home. Speaking of the offensive line, pretty good shape moving forward. I mean, there's been some really good news for Arkansas with seniors deciding to come back. And on the offensive line, that means Myron Cunningham, you're starting left tackle, and Ty Clary, you're starting right guard. Okay? This is a really good situation for a new quarterback, which Arkansas is going to have because Felipe Franks is not returning to Arkansas. I think Felipe announced that on New Year's Eve at 6:30. I did not write a story because it was New Year's Eve, 6:30. Felipe, I thought you knew better. I mean, he's not worried about me, but I know it is frustrating because a lot of recruits, like, I'm going to announce on Christmas Day or I'm going to announce on July 4th. And that's just like, for a guy like Danny, I know it's like, quit complaining. Everybody thinks we've got it, this amazing job. And it is. But sometimes there's, weekends and holidays, obviously. It's never fun to work on Christmas Day. And Felipe, you announced your decision on New Year's Eve at 6:30. Anyway, aside from that. Felipe's not coming back. I think most of us expected that already, so it's not like I didn't have a story prepared. But Felipe is declaring for the draft, and they're going to have a quarterback battle. Probably KJ Jefferson, Malik Hornsby going to be one of those two guys in the spring, if there is a spring, which I think there's going to be now that everything's happened the way it is. I mean, they've gone through practices and everything, so why not have a spring? So going to be between those two guys. You're going to return 7 guys on the offensive line who have significant amount of starting experience. 7 guys. That's where you drop your quarterback behind that, okay? Every wide receiver's coming back because Devion Warren's returning. So every wide receiver's coming back, plus you got the new guys coming in, Raheem Sanders, Keetron Jackson, Bryce Stevens, Jaden Wilson, Jaquaylin Crawford, the Oklahoma transfer, former 4-star recruit. Joining them, he'll be eligible. He would have been eligible in the bowl game. So, Traylon Smith coming back, Blake Kern coming back at tight end, Hudson Henry coming back at tight end. So, basically, everybody's back around the quarterback. You're just dropping a quarterback in. Pretty good situation. Really good. Great situation for a new quarterback to be in. So, that's definitely good. So, waiting on a decision from Takia Crawford. Arkansas probably going to sign another offensive line transfer, probably not a grad transfer, but a regular transfer. Right now they have 16 scholarship offensive linemen on the roster. If they were to get Crawford, that'd be 17, 18 if they get another guy. Myron Cunningham, Noah Gatlin, Dalton Wagner at tackle, Brady Latham, Ricky Stromberg, Bo Limmer at guard, Ty Clary at guard / center for this group. And then you've got Luke Jones, there's some guys providing depth. Luke Jones, Ryan Winkle, Shane Clennon, Dylan Rathke. I mentioned Drew Vest, promising walk-on. And then you've got those freshmen, Jalen St. John, Ray Curry, Marcus Henderson, possibly Takia Crawford. I mean, he would basically be part of this group. So you're talking about the guys that you would add if you get Crawford. He's 6'5", 335. You've got Jalen St. John, who's 6'5", 359. Ray Curry Jr., 6'5", 320. And Marcus Henderson, who was well over 300 pounds in high school, dropped down to 300 when he enrolled, and then is 284 because he played tight end a good bit this season, but he'll get up well over 300. You've got Terry Wells coming in, Cole Carson, Devon Manuel, 6'8", 300. And then looking ahead, for the offensive line, Pittman has said he'd like to bring in 4 guys each year, but you've also got Andrew Chamblee, 6'6", 290 out of Maumelle, who's a 4-star prospect in the class of 2022, and a Marion Harris, 6'5", 307 out of Joe T. Robinson in Little Rock, who's also a 4-star prospect. So it's a good in-state crop. So offensive line situation, not looking bad, right? When we look at the future. Now, obviously, they got to continue to get bigger than they were last year and certainly the year before that. And they should, another year in the weight room, another year for a guy like Myron Cunningham to walk around in 335, for Ricky Stromberg to walk around in 311. Both those guys added 35 pounds in the offseason. Get some other guys a little bit bigger in the weight room. But then, when we're talking about recruiting, some of these guys that they're bringing in, if they're able to get Takia Crawford at 335, I mentioned Jalen St. John, who obviously needs to shed weight at 359, Ray Curry at 320. Who knows how much weight Devon Manuel can carry at 6'8", 300. So, that sounds good, doesn't it? Doesn't that give you the warm and fuzzies? Switching over to basketball real quick. Arkansas played very well at Auburn. Now, Auburn knocked down 15 threes, shot over 50% from three-point range, and Arkansas still won 97-85. Arkansas, by the way, is 24th in the net rankings, which I guess basically makes them a 6th seed. They are 6th. They went from 3rd to 6th in the SEC Power Rankings. As Curtis Wilkerson was saying, if Auburn, I believe he was 76, if they move up one spot, then they would be they'd be a quad 1 type of win for Arkansas. But that's a good win on the road, and I kind of think that Arkansas maybe are feeling a little bit too good about themselves playing against Missouri. Now, losing Justin Smith obviously hurt them, Connor Vanover did not play very well. Desi Sills did not play. Nobody really played very well. But Connor, right after, people are, the broadcast before, everybody's like, in the Auburn game, every time Connor Vanover did something wrong, it's like he's 7'3", he shouldn't be doing that. And I came to his aid and told people to back off, because if he was doing some of the things that everybody was complaining that he didn't do, combined with what he does very well, blocking shots, he's been in a slump shooting threes, but he can shoot threes. He'll come out of that. If he did all those things that he does well, combined with what everybody says he should be doing well, he'd be a number 1 draft pick, and then, he goes out and has an 0 for 10 showing. So, don't appreciate that, Connor, but he'll bounce back, and I still stick by that. Everybody has a bad game. Everybody has an off day. I think losing Justin Smith in that game really cost them, but bottom line, they shot terrible from three-point range, from free throw line, from layups especially. They were atrocious against Missouri. Missouri's got a good team, okay? They got a good team, but no excuse to lose at home. This is kind of how I think of things like this, okay? So I'm going out and I'm playing golf, and I find myself to be in a zone. Everything I'm hitting, straight down the pipe, sticking it on the green, feeling good about it, right? And the next time I go out, maybe I speed my swing up a little bit, hit a little further. I got this. I've got this game figured out, right? Swing your speed, speed your swing up a little bit. Next thing you know, you're hitting things off the hosel. You can't, you're shanking everything. You're just playing awful. And it's because in your head, you got out of doing the things that you're supposed to do, right? You got out of doing just hitting the ball and swinging easy instead of, just trying to crush it. And I kind of think that may be what happened with Arkansas basketball a little bit after the Auburn game, finishing it the way they did with a dunk. And, that's a 97-85 road win against a good team. Not a great Auburn team, but a really good Auburn team that can really shoot the three. Go on the road and, the opponent, the home team hits 15 threes and shoots 51%. Most of the time you're going to lose that game. So I kind of feel like maybe something like that happened where, you kind of lose. You think you got it figured out and you're overconfident and you speed things up and, things don't work. So they'll bounce back. They got a tough one against Tennessee. What is that, Wednesday at 6? Tennessee, who just lost to Alabama, of course. Missouri had just lost the game before to Tennessee. So it's a tough conference, but I do think that Arkansas has a really good team. I think they'll bounce back. I hate when I see stuff like Arkansas sucks. They lost one game here. They started off 9-0 for the first time. The first time since 93 when they won the national championship, 93-94. And they lose one game to a top 12 team, and they suck. Come on. But Smith is out 3 to 6 weeks. I'm guessing a high ankle sprain. They didn't used to do surgery for high ankle sprains. It's really like the last couple of years where I've been hearing about this. Let's see, who had it? Jordan Jones at Arkansas and never came back from it. Eric Gregory, defensive end, he had it at Arkansas. This is last year, I guess, and never really came back from it. So hopefully a different result here. But minor ankle surgery. It used to be just a heal up deal. But 3 to 6 weeks, I would expect 6 weeks based on how I've seen this thing play out so far. But he rolled it against Auburn. Just kind of came down funny on it. It's a shame because he was having a good year. He brings a lot to the table. Very explosive. Curtis Wilkerson had a great article recently, top takeaways for Arkansas basketball through 10 games. I'll just give you a couple of the headlines here. But the impact, obviously he talks about the impact of losing Justin Smith, everything that he brings to the table. The logical fit isn't always so logical. A lot of people, I think, thought Vance Jackson would come in and play a bigger role at 6'9", 230. He didn't even play. They put Devontae Davis in, Jalen Williams. Those are the guys who took the minutes from Justin Smith. The freshmen are right where they need to be. I think the one big surprise, and he notes this, is Devontae Davis really ahead of KK right now in the pecking order. KK was like the number 60 ranked player in the country. The pros and cons of the pre-SEC schedule. Build a lot of confidence, obviously, but not a lot of real competition. No close games. Beat everybody by double digits, right? So there's no, putting a game away or, battling in a close game at the end. Those are a few of the headlines, but he agrees Arkansas is still in good shape. It's a really good article. It's a VIP article, so you need a HawgSports subscription to read it. But Curtis does a great job breaking down. For those who don't know Curtis's background, he's a former NAIA player. He's originally from McCrory, Arkansas. So, obviously he knows the state and knows the Hogs. But he's lived in St. Louis the last 10 years at an NAIA school where he's been an administrator, a coach. He's also worked in sports medicine. He's done a lot of stuff in a short amount of time. I think Curtis is 32 years old, so he's done a lot in a short amount of time. We ran a top 10 stories of 2020. I left out everything that had to do with COVID. Not everything, but all the bad stuff, like stuff getting canceled. I just left that out. Let's move on, right? But here's my stories in no particular order, just in the order of date. Felipe Franks transfers to Arkansas, a huge addition. Again, this is another thing, the guy got some hate here and there, and I guess every quarterback is going to get hate, and they're going to get blamed more for losses than they should. But he was 163 at 238 passing for 2,107 yards, which is 68.5%, which is a school record. It breaks a school record easily that was 41 years old. Kevin Scanlon, 1979, 66.2%. So basically shattered that. 17 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions, a 163.1 efficiency rating, which is third all-time. 0.5 points from being second all-time. Ryan Mallett had the second best. Brandon Allen has the best. Arkansas basketball, April 20th, 2020, signs the number 8 ranked recruiting class in the country. I heard somebody on the Auburn board, somebody goes, Musselman is the kind of guy that's just going to hit or miss on transfers, and this year he hit. That was kind of their excuse. And I'm just like, he just signed the number 8 recruiting class in the country. I mean, it's not all about transfers. It's a mix, and that's what he does so good. He mixes the transfer market, the grad transfer market, and recruiting all very well. Mason Jones named SEC Co-Player of the Year. There was actually 3 guys. This is March 10th, 2020 last year. But Mason Jones, Emmanuel Quigley, Reggie Perry. So Mason Jones and Reggie Perry were the AP co-offensive or co-players of the year in the SEC, and Emmanuel Quigley was the coach's choice for that. Heston Kjerstad drafted number 2 overall, June 10th, 2020, Baltimore Orioles. The Hogs given Georgia and Florida. So what was already considered the toughest schedule in the Western Division, they also drew the 2 best teams in the division, prompting Hunter Yurachek to say it was the toughest schedule in the history of college football. Arkansas beat Mississippi State. Now, I could have included all the Arkansas wins, but this one was significant, obviously. Arkansas was a 16-point underdog heading to Starkville. They had just beaten LSU, who's the defending national championship team. So at the time, that was a bigger story than, looking back on it, because LSU didn't have a great season this year, obviously. They had an okay season, but not anything like national championship. But Mississippi State had gone there, beaten them, put up record numbers. Costello was going to win the Heisman. I mean, it was a huge deal. And then Arkansas went down there and beat them 21-14 to end the 20-game SEC losing streak. So that was a huge deal. Next was the next week. Arkansas was robbed at Auburn. I mean, absolutely horrendously robbed. Just to recap it, Bo Nix turns and spikes the ball behind him. It's called intentional grounding because he had fumbled the ball. It should have been a fumble. They review it. They uphold the intentional grounding, which was the wrong call, and then they didn't have the damn decency to apologize for it. They tried to explain it away on Twitter, the SEC officiating site, Twitter page. Just ridiculous. But Arkansas was robbed there. They were later robbed again against LSU on a fumble recovery. Dude fumbles the ball. First of all, I don't know how they didn't call it a fumble on the field, but they didn't. They reviewed it and said he did fumble it, but it wasn't an immediate recovery. I mean, and literally there's a scrum under the pile. Joe Fouché comes up with the ball. Joe Fouché recovered 2 fumbles that he was denied this year. Terrible. Later in that game, Jalen Catalon was hit for targeting when he hit a dude with his abdomen and hip. So stupid. Earlier in the Missouri game that season, I guess that's, Arkansas' second to last game. Earlier in the Missouri game, Isaiah Nichols was hit with a late hit on the quarterback when the offensive lineman for Missouri pushed him in the back into the quarterback, and he gets hit with a and that was like these aren't like as game deciding as that Auburn one, but there's still some awful penalties. And then of course late in the game, this was a momentum changer because it's 3rd and 11, and Arkansas breaks up a pass. And it's 3rd and 11. Instead, they get a first down because you can't cross your arms and look at your bench for 1.5 seconds. You can't do this. That's a personal foul if you didn't know. The gall to do that, to cross. How dare you cross your arms? Joe Fouché. All these are Joe Fouché. They don't like Joe Fouché. That's the problem here. Joe Fouché is disliked by SEC officiating. Robbed of 2 fumbles. Unsportsmanlike conduct. Ridiculous. Next up, Arkansas signs the number 20 ranked recruiting class. How are we doing right now on time? We're already 30 minutes in. Smokes. Arkansas signs the number 20 ranked recruiting class. That has since changed. They're number 21 now. We'll see how things shake out with that. I would think a lot more schools you're not going to see as many schools sign 25 as you have in years past. So point totals from past, doesn't play as big a role because you're going to see a lot of transfers, a lot of grad transfers this year, just the way things worked out with COVID. So maybe Arkansas still stays in the top 25, but I think they probably need another high school recruit to make that happen, just based on the point total. But again, you're not going to see as many people sign up to the 25 as you have in years past. But still a big deal, number 20 ranked recruiting class. Sam Pittman, I love this about him. He says, number 20 ranked recruiting class isn't good enough. Actually acknowledging that the recruiting rankings do matter and there's some merit to them, because there is. Arkansas starts off 9-0. I guess Arkansas is 0-1 in 2021, but in 2020, for the 2020-2021 season, they were 9-0, and that was a big deal, as I mentioned, first time since 93, 27 years ago. 7 Razorback seniors opt in. Obviously, we talked about those guys a little bit. Dorian Gerald, that was a very iffy one, I think, because I think entering the season he did not plan to do that. T.J. Hammonds, Blake Kern, Devion Warren, Myron Cunningham, Ty Clary, Grant Morgan's a big one. And Grant Morgan, here in it's 11:06 while this is being recorded, about noon, he's one of 3 finalists for the Burlsworth Trophy, which goes to the best walk-on or former walk-on in college football. It'd be nice to see an Arkansas kid win that for once. So that'll be here in less than an hour, I guess. They start on time. We also recently did a 10 things to look forward to on the site in college and Razorback athletics. This is just football, basketball, men's basketball, baseball. Wide open quarterback battle this spring. A full, uninterrupted year in the system for these players, the football team, and the pageantry of college football. That was my 3 takes. Danny West, a deep in-state class. Always fun covering a really nice-looking in-state class, and it looks that way for 2022. We talked about a couple of those offensive linemen, but there are certainly several others. Getting visitors back on campus for recruiting. It has been it's been almost a year. So I think like that first week in March is the last time a recruit stepped foot on campus and was entertained by the coach. Now, some have come in, obviously, but they haven't been able to meet eye to eye with the coaches. And, of course, the transfer market, something Danny's looking forward to. And, obviously, there's been a lot of talk with Takia Crawford. I think somebody also mentioned, and I was wrong on this, in addition to the Justin Stepp stuff, talking about the bowl game. And somebody mentioned if Arkansas is going to be, back in the mix with Takia Crawford. And I think I said, I don't know, since, last staff, that was their recruit. So may have been my worst show last time out. Curtis Wilkerson, one of his things is the emergence of Moses Moody, which has been fun to watch. The real March Madness. Please let that happen. And Musselman's prowess in the portal. Things he's looking forward to. And then we had one chipped in from our intern, Mason Choate. Combination of young talent and experience with the baseball team. A couple of other notable things. One other, I guess with one school, with Texas. Arkansas plays Texas week 2 next year. They open with Rice in football, and then they play Texas. So Texas just fired Tom Herman, which I think this is the perfect example. I always say this, like with ADs, everything is great, and until suddenly it isn't. So over 3 weeks ago, he says, I want to be very clear on this, Tom Herman is our head football coach. And this is right before signing day, of course. And this is why the early signing day is no good. And again, I've stated my case, like early signing day is great for me. Ad revenue in December is up. It's good to have high traffic in December with 2 national signing days. Are you kidding me? It's a dream, right? And given that, I'm still going to tell you I don't like the early signing period. I don't like it because coaches are changing jobs. We just seen this with Justin Stepp at Arkansas. Head coach at Texas, Tom Herman, fired after signing day conveniently. Now, what's happened since the AD said that? The AD said, I want to be very clear, Tom Herman is our head coach. What's happened since then? They played one football game and they beat the tar out of Colorado. It's like 55-23. beat the crap out of Colorado, and he gets fired. So he goes from Tom Herman is our football coach, National Signing Day, beat the crap out of Colorado, you're fired. That's one reason I don't like the early signing period. So Arkansas will have a new, Texas will have a new coach when Arkansas faces them in Steve Sarkisian, offensive coordinator at Alabama. Of course, we are familiar with him. Did a great job at Washington. Was on the struggle bus a little bit there at USC. Obviously, I don't want to dig into that, but there was obviously some issues with, according to him, mixing some pills and alcohol, and there were a lot of issues with that. But he's done a great job at Alabama and deserves a second chance. Everybody deserves a second chance, right? But you have to like that, I think, in the sense that I don't know if I mentioned Sam Ellenger has decided not to return for his bonus senior season. So they'll have a new starting quarterback and a new head coach, kind of a starting over type of deal at Texas. So not the worst situation for Arkansas. I don't think it would have been a bad situation either if Herman had been there. I think I've covered about everything I want to cover. See if we got any questions. We are 36 minutes in that I've been talking. We'll go a little while longer. Matthew Lowe says we need Takia. Yeah, he'd be a big get. We'll see what happens. Trey, says Joshua Shivers. That was Matthew Lowe before. Joshua Shivers says, Trey, what's your biggest concern with Stepp leaving, and what's your favorite thing about Guyton? Well, Guyton's a high-energy guy. I think, Danny put it well, and I was thinking the same thing because I went back and watched some videos, but he reminds us both a lot of Sam Carter, who's Arkansas's cornerbacks coach. High-energy guy. I think he can be a good recruiter. And Kendall Briles the thing that I like about him is that Kendall Briles loves him, and it was such a fast move. It's pretty obvious, like, this is the guy right here. Let's go get him. And boom, boom. A couple hours after we're reporting the Justin Stepp stuff. So with Stepp leaving, I just know, I guess the knowing him, I know that he's a relentless recruiter, a very hard worker, wants to be the best. So you hate to lose a guy like that, but I understand why he's moving on. I wish him well. Again, I understand the angst that people have. Why, it's okay to fire somebody, but you better not leave us, or we'll hate you forever kind of thing. And I get that. But it sounds like everything is okay with the recruits, and Guyton's already been in touch with them. Coach Kenny G. Jeremy Dick says, what's up, Trey? Happy New Year. Happy New Year to all you. I'm really looking forward to is 2021 going to be that much different than 2020? I think it is, just because we know so much more about the virus and, better treatments. The vaccine is here, and hopefully that's going to change a lot of stuff. I will be getting the vaccine when it becomes available to me, which I don't know when that'll be, but hopefully April. I haven't played basketball, and I love playing basketball. I love just shooting around, of course, but I like to play basketball, and I have not played, aside from coaching my daughter's team, I haven't played basketball at all. And so I haven't gone to the gym. I've been doing, push-ups and my power blocks and, running out here, I haven't been to a gym. So hopefully I get the vaccine and feel comfortable enough to go back into a gym. When I get that, I'm going in. Alex Hamilton says, how long till teams start taking our coaches? It's good to have coaches that are wanted, right? It's good to have coaches that are wanted. But that was a unique situation. I don't know that you would have seen Stepp do that for many other programs. Clemson and probably South Carolina are probably your only two that could have just come in and swooped in and got him like that. Who's the new wide receiver? Kenny Guyton, Gary. Danny Graham says, we definitely took a step forward with the football team in 2020. What do we need to do to take the next step? What do you think the next step is for this team? I think obviously improving depth overall. That's always been something that's kind of held Arkansas back a little bit, especially as the season progresses. And playing really good teams, you see Arkansas hang with them for a little while, and then depth starts to become a factor, and you get worn down. So continue to improve the depth. That's always been true. And then boost up the offensive and defensive line, especially the offensive line. I mean, I think the offensive line obviously took some steps in the right direction. The defensive line, I think, is recruited pretty well and should be okay, even though they're losing Xavier Kelly and Jonathan Marshall. But, Isaiah Nichols, I think, was a really pleasant, I don't want to say surprise because I thought he was going to be pretty good, but I think he's going to be really good. And they've recruited well at defensive end. They could get Julius Coates back would be big, add a real threat and, as a pass rusher. And, maybe Matayo Soli can be that. I think he needs to add some weight and stop having a cast on his hand. I mean, he's played more games with a cast on his hand than without. And Zach Williams has, showed some promise there, but improve on the offensive line. I think they're in a good situation. Brian Malone says, will we lose any more players because of the wide receiver coaching change? Right now, it's too early to say. I would imagine your first response as a recruit has got to be, or a signee has got to be, you're either ticked off or confused or both, right? Some combination. But it doesn't sound like it yet. Danny has some recruit reaction. Again, if you have a VIP subscription to HawgSports, you can read recruit reaction from, I think he's got 4 or 5 recruits on there. 3 wide receivers have commented on it, and Lucas Coley also, the quarterback. So hopefully not, but you never say never when you have a change like that. I know Jaden Wilson actually recruited him. Jaden Wilson's brother played with Guyton at Ohio State, and Guyton recruited him to Colorado State. So there is a connection there. Bryce Stevens sounds really solid too. Justin Starn says, thoughts on the where we be for our season record for basketball team. I mean, they lose the road game because they lost at home, but I've always felt like if you're on the road and you have a shot to win at the end, right, that's all you can ask for. And if you have that, then 50% of the time you should win, right? So if you win 50% of your road games, you take care of business at home, that should put you right there in contention for SEC title. And the years that, you win a little bit more than 50% on the road, you definitely win, I guess. But otherwise, that should put you in the top 4 seeds at least. So that's kind of where I think Arkansas ends up. Casey French Fulton says, it's still strange you did the call and he didn't say anything about COVID-19 TCU issues. Maybe he didn't know. Definitely disappointed and ready for fall 2021 football. Not sure what you're saying there, Casey. Lance Hamilton said, I'm glad you're on now. Entertainment stand in line at the DMV in Auburn. Oh, the DMV in Auburn, Alabama. Yeah. You got to take care of that before you get to – that's not a good place to be. I've been there once this year during COVID also. Lance Hamilton said, I'm glad you're on now. Oh, sorry, I just read that. George Ezekpe, E-Z-I-K-P-E. I'm just going to call you George Easy. Trey, I go back in Arkansas since the 1970s. How long have you been in Arkansas? How long have I been in Arkansas? We moved here – so I was born in Georgia. We moved around a lot when I was real little. So I was born in Georgia. We lived in Alabama. We lived in Tennessee. Lived in Georgia again, I guess. But by the time I was 7 years old, I lived in Arkansas, North Little Rock. So that would have been 1985 or something. I can't even remember. So I guess 85, 84, something like that. But I lived in North Little Rock and then moved to Sheridan in like 89, I think. I believe so. I was in 7th grade. So I would consider Sheridan my hometown, although kind of split North Little Rock and Sheridan. But, I went to junior high school, formative years, and then went to the University of Arkansas in 1996. And I've lived in Fayetteville longer than I've lived anywhere. So I spent a little time in Georgia after, a little time in Little Rock after, and then moved back to Fayetteville, I think in 2004 or 2005, I believe. 2004-ish, and I guess 2020, so I've been here a long time. Zach Bonin says, Stepp did well for us. Hate to see him go, but I get him wanting to go back home. And I mean, it's going to happen. I mean, most years you see changes with assistant coaches. I don't know that we're going to see any others, though. You never know. Never say never. John Dillinger says, hey, Trey, who do you think are the top 3 recruiters in Hog history, excluding head coaches? There'll be some people who won't agree with me on David Lee. I mean, when he came back to Arkansas, everybody's like retread and all this stuff. But, I mean, there's literally a recruiting rule called the David Lee rule from when he was pushing the envelope with recruits. David Lee spent the night at a recruit's house one time, hit a recruit out, so he wouldn't sign with Baylor, so he'd sign with Arkansas. I think they put him up in a hotel or something. I mean, so David Lee always pushed the envelope with recruiting. And, when Arkansas was having trouble recruiting Warren, which is the state's top, if it's not the state's top producer, it's up there, right? Arkansas was having trouble recruiting there, and, David Lee fixed whatever issues, and they have gotten everybody they wanted from Warren since. So I would put David Lee up there. Sam Pittman I'm going to put up there because Sam Pittman did some things. And, this is maybe more recent history. Stuff tends to stick with you a little more. But Sam Pittman did some things at Arkansas that had never been done before. He went to Florida and got recruits that Arkansas that, had been offered by Florida, Florida State, Miami. And Arkansas has never done that before. They've never gotten 4-star recruits, at least since I've been doing this for 18 years, almost 19 years in. But it has not done that since then, or before that. They've not gone into Florida and gotten 4-star recruits that the major Florida schools wanted. So I would put Sam Pittman up there. I'm tempted to say Justin Stepp, in terms of recent history. I might say Jeff Traylor and Justin Smith. I might have to put a tie. And I know that's all very recent, but Smith did some great stuff. I mean, think about the 4-star recruits. Now, not all of them panned out. TQ Jackson, Shamar Nash have both transferred out, but they were 4-star prospects. Darren Turner is a 4-star wide receiver. Traylon Burks, Trey Knox, Keytron Jackson, Raheem Sanders, and other guys were involved in that, obviously. Scott Fountain, obviously. Scott Fountain catches a lot of flack for on-field special teams performance. People forget what a hell of a recruiter he is. We've been talking about that a little bit on the Raiders Edge message board. But, I might say those guys have definitely stood out to me over time. Some of those guys might surprise some people. I'm trying to think. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody. Barry Lonnie's got a pretty good track record recruiting tight ends. Zach Bonin says Pittman and Horton are the first to come to mind. I'd have to do some research to come up with my third. I like Horton. Horton does a good job. I don't know if I'd put him amongst the top 3. Lisa Cup Hancock says good hire. Randy Smith says Happy New Year, Trey. Chris Archer says good hire. James Aaron Lowry says, thought I read where they said it wasn't official yet. He left for South Carolina. He's going to South Carolina. Unless something changes, which I don't think it is now. But Justin Stepp's going to South Carolina. I have that on excellent authority. Just like I had the authority that I would be shocked if he left for South Carolina. At the time, he had not even been contacted. People on South Carolina's board, like posters and stuff, and I'm sure some of them have good information. I'm not saying that. But at the time, he had not been contacted by South Carolina. Was not really considered an option for them. And then some things changed. Colton Smith, who is going to start next year, Trey, KJ, Hornsby, or Coley? I would probably say KJ. He is older. He has experience. We've seen him compete and have success. So I would say he's got the edge. But I would like to see these guys both get some action against Rice next year. I'm a firm believer that the quarterback job is not won in camp. I mean, it's awarded, like they say, this is going to be our starting quarterback, and he comes out. But typically the starting quarterback job is discovered on the field. Sometimes it's through an injury. Sometimes a player gets pulled. I mean, if you go back to Chad Morris, they never named they named starting quarterbacks out of camp, and it never mattered, right? It was back and forth, back and forth. I mean, Cole Kelly was the starting quarterback the first year out of camp. Ty Storey ended up starting more games. The next year, it was Ben Hicks, and, Nick Starkel was obviously the better talent, which Nick Starkel, by the way, returning to San Jose State for another year. Nick Starkel's success at San Jose State shows me a lot. And I've said this before, like when he played against Ole Miss, we were like, okay, this is the guy. And then, as I've said before, the more comfortable he got in Chad Morris's offense, the worse he became. He was a disaster. He threw 5 interceptions against San Jose State, which is where he's at now. He was a disaster. He got worse and worse and worse to where it was just like, can't even put Nick Starkel in. He was an afterthought in the second half of the season. And then, it just goes to show you, some of the success he had at Texas A&M before he came to Arkansas, and success he's having at San Jose State. It says a lot to me anyway. Jonathan Mosley says, what were TCU's other circumstances besides just not wanting to play an inferior opponent? Well, I think it's just an inferior opponent. I think it's just, they had some players opt out, obviously, in the secondary, and then some players in the secondary with COVID or COVID-related issues, and then the defensive line got hit also. So that was basically what happened. They just didn't have enough secondary or defensive line players. James Aaron Lowry says, I'm glad he isn't coming back. He held the ball too long, and, there was a reason why he transferred here because he wasn't playing over Trask. He was still 13-3, James. He was 13-3 as a starter his last 16 games before coming to Arkansas. Okay? Kyle Trask obviously was a great quarterback for them. So I don't know that Arkansas wins 3 games this year without Felipe Franks. So I want to put that in perspective for everybody. Yeah. By the way, I caught a lot of flack. I caught a lot of flack on Twitter for saying this. I knew I would, but all I was saying after the Georgia game. So Georgia beat Cincinnati. Georgia beat Cincinnati. So after that game, I tweeted like, yes, Florida obviously laid an egg. But people don't ever mention the SEC, and this is true. The SEC, due to their really good tie-ins, they always play a better, higher-ranked team from another conference. Like, so the number 5 SEC team is going to play, the number 1 or number 2 Big 12 team, I guess maybe in this case it was maybe the number 3 versus number 1 with Oklahoma and Florida. And Florida had a lot of things, but I didn't even make that excuse. I didn't even say like Florida had 9 starters opt out. I didn't say that. I said Florida laid an egg. That's not an excuse for Florida, but everybody was like Big 10 fans, no Big 12 fans came at me like, why is it every time the SEC team loses there's an excuse, or it's because players opted out or they didn't want to be there? And all I said was Florida laid an egg. But I think a lot of people have that reaction when the SEC loses because the SEC has a larger fan base, more fans, more passionate fans, better facilities, more money, better TV contract, better bowl tie-ins, better big-name coaches, up and down. I'm not saying Oklahoma or Ohio State doesn't have those things. I'm just saying as a conference, as a whole. So when the SEC loses, better recruiting territory, more prospects come out of the Southeast than anywhere. One thing after another. So I think maybe that fuels a little bit of the attitude from SEC fans. When they lose, it is a fluke. I'm not saying it is. I think that fuels that. But I'm not saying like Oklahoma can't beat a top-ranked SEC team. They obviously can. Oklahoma's an elite program. But I also would say top to bottom Big 12, it doesn't match up the same. And all I was saying when I said that was what is true. I wasn't making an excuse for a loss. I was saying, the SEC usually gets matched up. It's the number 5 SEC team versus the number 1 AAC team, like it was with Georgia and Cincinnati. Or, it's like that all the way across the board except for outside the college football players, except for, Texas A&M and North Carolina, which was the 2 versus 3. So that was the only game where it's flipped. All 6, SEC went – and again, I was just saying they had that, and they still – almost always have the best bowl record. Not like excusing a loss. They still almost, and they're 6-2. All 6 wins came against top 25 teams. Who else has 6 wins? And who else has all their wins against top 25 teams in bowl games? Nobody. And it's always like that. That's all I'm saying. I wasn't making an excuse for Florida. Florida laid an egg. They look terrible. I mean, and again, I'm not making an excuse. I can make an excuse for Florida. I'm not the Florida Gators. I can say one reason that Florida lost, obviously, I think they still would have lost to Oklahoma, but I don't know they would have got humiliated if they didn't have the 9 starters opt out, okay? And if they didn't just lose, a lot to be said for, do you want to be there? Like the Auburn Northwestern game, and again, I'm not making an excuse. Auburn was not as good as people. Auburn did not deserve to be playing Northwestern. Northwestern is number 2 team in the Big Ten. Auburn, I mean, they got lucky as hell against Kentucky. Should have lost that game. Am I remembering that right? Yeah, Kentucky, I believe. But obviously they were, the Arkansas game they should have lost that game. They robbed that game. I mean, they fired their head coach for the way they performed this season. So that was a no-brainer. I think all of us thought that Auburn was going to get hammered because, they don't have I always think that when a team doesn't have a head coach, they're about to get slammed, because it's a transition. I think back to how Arkansas played Missouri that year with Darren McFadden in 2007. I guess it was 2008, but it was after 2007 season. Florida, there are reasons that they got hammered like that. But they also just lost the SEC championship game, and had they won that, they were going to go to the college football playoffs. So, it's like, doesn't mean as much. You have all these players opt out. You can kind of see the writing on the wall. But I still think they would have lost to Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma's got a better program the way they've been playing. But I don't think they would have gotten utterly humiliated. I went off on a tangent there. Let's see. Christopher Stein says, with the new recruits coming in and the way the football team performed, how do you see the season ending in 2021 and overall record? Well, I'd have to look at the schedule, but I think Arkansas will make it back to a bowl game. I think. Now, a lot depends on quarterback play, but I look at the pieces around them, especially on offense. They ought to be a lot better, more polished on offense. Having another year in Kendall Briles' system, everybody returns around that quarterback, but you never know on quarterback. You just never fully know. I think the sample that we have seen with KJ was really positive against Missouri. I mean, he did everything he needed to do to win that game. I mean, they went into the fourth quarter with a 10-point lead, and Arkansas scored 15 points in the fourth quarter. That's usually, if I tell you that going into the game, Arkansas is going to play Missouri, they're going to have a 10-point lead going into the fourth quarter, and they're going to score 2 touchdowns in the fourth. Yeah, no-brainer. Arkansas won. That's obviously not how it happened. Defense really didn't hold up the other end of the bargain on that one. So the defense has obviously got, they started waning towards the end. And I think, injuries and all those kinds of things start to play a role. Depth plays a role. Had some players opt out. I mean, all that stuff plays a role. So got to continue to improve depth on defense. But I still think that they have a really good chance to make a bowl game. Who knows on Texas? Who knows how they'll respond? First-year coach, all the changes that come with that, new quarterback. You just don't know. But that's a big game, obviously. You'd obviously expect them to win their 3 non-conference games that aren't Power 5 opponents. And then, how do they perform against Texas? This is the year that they get, Auburn at home, who they can beat, Mississippi State at home, who they can beat. Who else do they get at home? They got to go at Georgia this year. But I look at the schedule and I say, yeah, they can win 6. Nobody's shocked. I don't think anybody's shocked about Felipe. I mean, Pittman said numerous times he didn't expect him to come back, so it wasn't too big a surprise, although New Year's Eve, don't make an announcement where somebody's got to get to work on it because you made an announcement. I know. Nobody cares what I say. Get over it. Josh Garr says, we have got some major speed coming in next year. I can't wait. Yep, it should be fast. Why did Vance Jackson only play 2 minutes Saturday? It's a mystery. I mean, they could just like other guys better. Larry Bateman says, hello from Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Sucks losing to Missouri, especially living here. Mizzou basketball is like A&M. Football just can't seem to beat them. Still rooting hard for them, though. 9-0, playing a junior college schedule, says David Shade. I mean, it wasn't like it was Arkansas's fault. I mean, they were supposed to play some marquee games, tournaments, all that kind of stuff preseason. They had to reschedule everything because of COVID. And still, they did take care of business completely. I mean, they beat everybody by double digits. So, and Auburn's not. I mean, a road win at Auburn under Bruce Pearl is a notable win. And they dominated them. You know, they won by 12 or 13. Tyler Toper says, I still found our loss to Mizzou promising as bad as we shot. I mean, they could not have. That's the worst they've ever shot, according to HawgStats.com. It's the worst they've ever shot in an SEC game. I got Julius. Is that Julius Coates on here? Julius Coates has 2 hogs on here. I thought you liked Julius. I like that. I'm not sure what it means. You coming back with the team? Cliff Boyd says, is Morris coming back at wide receiver? Tyson Morris, we haven't heard on him yet, but you know Tyson's pretty close on that cusp of 6'7" wide receiver, you know. Usually what travels, and I would think if he feels good about that situation, then no reason for him not to come back. You know, he also, I think, what did he go to Central Oklahoma his first year and redshirted and then had to sit out a year while transferring. So I could see him wanting to come back, you know, kind of missed a year because of that. Josh Carr says, how good is Jalen Catalon, first-team All-American next year? I don't put anything out of the picture for Catalon. I think he's got a shot at that. I really do. I mean, when's the last time you felt like great about a safety, or like even safeties that have, like people have talked about, they're so good and all this stuff, you still were kind of like, he's not that good. You know, you have. Catalon's really, really good, and I think everybody's on the same page with it. If he keeps up the way he's trending right now, All-American, yeah, in his future. Now, you got to win some more games. You got to have that, you know, that in your corner too. Jonathan Eddington says, T. Crawford, where is he going, Trey? I still think I've got the crystal ball into Arkansas. Do I feel as good about it since he's postponed his announcement today? No, but I still am leaning pretty strongly to Arkansas for him. Nathan E. Allen says, hey, Trey, if you haven't watched it yet, you should watch Arkansas versus SEC 2020 on YouTube by Hoggy Bones. I have. I actually watched that, Nathan, and tweeted it and tagged SEC officiating, Greg Sankey, and Hunter Yurchek. But, yeah, I saw that. Chase Hogan-Jones says T. Crawford didn't even have a chance to breathe. Dang fans started blowing him up instantly. Yeah. Arkansas fans, remember. Gary Davis says, hey, Trey, what do you think about that MSU versus Tulsa Post Game Brawl? Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, like that kind of stuff, like it was probably somebody wrote an article on it on 24/7 and got a ton of views because everybody likes to fight. No matter what anybody says, everybody likes to fight, but I thought it was, you know, it's just – can't come out there with your shirt off, you know, before pregame, chirping at each other, and you know that was happening all game long. Shouldn't be kicking people in the face and running off, but I mean, it's a brawl. Nobody saw exactly what was happening before that. I mean, it's disappointing. And especially after the game, like getting on your phone showing, you know, being on Snapchat or whatever, or Instagram or whatever he was on, like bragging and laughing about it. Not a good look. I think it hurts Mississippi State. I think it hurts their perception with recruits, parents, all that kind of stuff. Jim Taylor says, hey, Trey, Jim Taylor in Fresno, California. Thanks for what you do in the gang, for the excellent work this past year. Us out-of-state alumni appreciate you. If you and Danny want some Cali pistachios, get a mailing address to me. I like pistachios. I think I'll do that. Saving your profile right here. Aaron Scott Cagle says, you're the best, buddy. Love your stuff. Signing. Appreciate that, guys. Marco Giles says, Trey, with a full camp, do you think they will eventually implement the 4.25 for next? I mean, they ran 4.25 this year. It's just they ran in situations at times where they couldn't, or where it just made a lot more sense. But they ran 4.25, and they mixed it up a good bit. They just ran the three down linemen set the most. And I think part of that is, you know, where are we the deepest? Secondary. I mean, secondary recruited pretty well. They got some good secondary players, so that might have been a big part of it. But I think we'll see more of that if they shore some things up on the defensive line, see how they do in recruiting. Obviously got a couple of guys back, but lost a couple of guys as well. Marco Giles says, Happy New Year. Josh Garr says, one thing I've been wondering is with the free season for the players, what does that do for the all-time statistical record holders? I mean, we could see some records fall because of that. I don't think it – I mean, maybe you see an asterisk. I don't know. It's a good question. Where will Chad Morris end up? LOL, I don't know. I don't wish ill will on anybody, but he didn't do a good job here. Jeremy Dick says it's time for KJ to prove he's got talent to do it. Hornsby and Coley battle up front. All right, everybody. There's still a lot of questions left, but I got to go because we got some news coming. You know, the Burlsworth trophy's being awarded at noon, and Grant Morgan's in line for that. So we'll see how things work out. It'd be nice for an Arkansas kid to win that. Of course, I got to remind you guys before I sign out, there's plenty of ways to watch and listen. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, throw us that 5-star review right now. There's nothing else happening, so you can sign out right now and go there and click that 5-star rating. It definitely helps boost our channel. It helps about as much as anything you can do. Also available on Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere else you can think of to find your favorite podcast. We'd love to have the rating systems that they do there, whether it's 5-star, 10, whatever they do. Please give us that top rating. Also available on Facebook Live. You're watching right now on Facebook Live. We upload to YouTube right after this. Throw us a thumbs up or a like on both of those channels. Follow the page, subscribe to the page, hit the notifications bells so you're notified anytime we upload new videos. Also, HawgSports is just $1 right now for your first month. If you like VIP Insider Razorback content from the #1 insider source, you want to take advantage of that. Or 30% off for your first year. All right, everybody. We nailed it. Good show today, better than last time because everything we talked about last time didn't happen. Hog Hoops Live will be with you on Thursday. Thursday, mid-morning probably, after the Tennessee game with Curtis Wilkerson. So be sure to tune into that. It is on a different YouTube channel. You have to follow the page on the Hog Hoops Live YouTube channel, but it will show up on this Facebook page here. And, of course, the same channel on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, everywhere else. All right, everybody. Thanks for your questions. Been a good show today. We'll be back with you guys. I guess, I don't know if we'll have any reason to come back on this week with football season being wrapped up, but we might. You never know. We might need an emergency podcast or something like that. I still feel like I owe you a walk and talk, maybe some kind of season wrap walk and talk. I don't know. We'll see what happens, but we didn't get to do one after the after the TCU game because it was canceled. But next time the show comes up on Facebook, it'll be Hog Hoops Live. All right, everybody. This has been Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com. We'll catch you next time.